Have you got 30 grand to spend, but you want something that's fun, it's got seating for 4 people, and it has a big boot? Well, I'm delighted to say the hot hatchback market isn't about to die anytime soon. Not by a long chalk. Meet the new Renault Megane RS.
I sound excited, don't I? Well, I have every reason to be, judging by Renault's past hot hatch hits. As ever, Renault's motorsport division has taken a good hard look at the latest Megane and given it the once over. So, Renault Sport has given it some fat arches, a diffuser, reworked the suspension and fitted the 1.8 litre turbo engine from the new Alpine A110 sports car. But does it live up to Renault Sport's outstanding past catalogue, or does it promise a lot and under-deliver like the 2014 Renault Sport Clio?
Now, before I answer that, let me talk to you about the practical bits. No, don't go away. Listen, this is a hot hatchback. It's got to do the boring bits of life as well. Now, as you'd expect, it's got the same interior as the standard Renault Megane. So there's a mixture of lovely soft touch plastics and some really rather scratchy plastics as well. The door bins are really nice actually. They're felt lined so things don't jangle around. In fact, they're actually quite big. If I grab the Carbuyer large water bottle, you can see that it easily fits in there. Now, every Renault Megane RS comes with a touchscreen in the middle of the dashboard. Now, the entry-level car has a 7-inch landscape screen and lots of buttons, and it looks pretty naff, actually. So I would recommend you upgrade to the 8.7-inch screen here. It's a portrait one, and it looks a lot better. However, it looks a lot better than the standard screen because, in general, it looks... I don't know, I think it looks a little bit naff, but it's got this large border all the way around the outside and it just looks like your first ever tablet computer. And not only that, but some of the menus are difficult to operate as well. But like I say, this is a lot better than the standard landscape screen, so you're going to have to go for it. New RS bits, well, there's a new steering wheel. We've got the optional Alcantara trimmed one here. It costs 250 quid. It looks and feels really nice. And there's a pair of heavily bolstered sports seats. Again, we've got the optional Alcantara trimmed ones here. They cost £1,200 and they look and they feel really expensive. Now, another thing we've got in here is the £300 RS monitor. Now, it's an app that you can, it's also a smartphone app as well, but on the screen here it gives you your braking pressure, your throttle pressure, your torque curve, your power curve. There's even a lap counter here as well, so you can impress your friends down the pub.
The standard level of kit all sounds pretty good. Renault throws in 18-inch alloys, sat-nav and that RS branded steering wheel and seats, but that's on top of the Renault Sport tuned chassis. At just under 27.5 grand, it's good value for money, but to make your RS look like the car we have here, you're going to have to fork out £1,300 for this fabulous volcanic orange paint, £1,200 for the Alcantara seats, £950 for these black 19-inch wheels, £300 for the larger portrait infotainment system, and £1,500 for the cup chassis. We'll talk more about that later. So, what you're looking at here is a 31 grand car.
Now, on first impressions, the Megane RS has a clear advantage over the Civic Type R because you can fit 3 people back here. Now, I mean you can fit 3 people, literally, because there is a third seatbelt here, so you can fit 3 people. However, there's no space for that third person's legs, thanks to this large centre transmission tunnel here and the centre console. It does mean you've got some ventilation though, but there's nowhere to put your legs. Speaking of leg room, well, there's not a huge amount of it, I have to say. Now, I'm just over 5'10", that's set up in my driving position, and I'm okay. But if you're just over 6 foot, you're probably not going to be okay, and the same goes for headroom. Lastly, it does feel just a little bit claustrophobic in here. Thanks to these sports seats and this dark trim, you do feel a little bit hemmed in.
The boot is similarly average too. It's a bit larger than a Golf R, but nowhere near as large as the Honda Civic Type Rs. And while the Megane's boot is a tad smaller than the boot you find in a Hyundai i30N, there's no strut brace in the boot in the Renault like there is in the Hyundai. Practicalities over with. What we're all dying to know, is the new Megane RS a great Renault Sport hot hatch, or does it fall short?
It's rubbish. I'm joking. It's actually really very good. But I do have to caveat something though. Now there are two Megane RSs. There's the standard car with 275 brake horsepower, and there's going to be a trophy model arriving later, and that'll have around 295 brake horsepower. Now we've got the standard car here, and because Renault Sport has tried to make the Megane RS a little bit easier to live with, a little bit nicer to drive every single day, they've sort of softened it up a little bit. That's why you can have the standard car with the standard sport chassis. But if you want to spice things up a little bit, Renault will sell you a Cup chassis. Now we've got it here, it costs £1,500. And what it does, it adds stiffened springs, stiffened dampers, stiffened anti-roll bar, and to keep that 275 brake horsepower in check, a limited slip differential. Now you may have seen my left hand twiddling something down here. No, it's not that, it's thank the good Lord Renault Sport have added a manual gearbox option to the Megane RS. Now Renault has learned from its mistake with the Clio RS because that car only comes with a automatic gearbox, but this one comes with a choice of a 6-speed manual or a 6-speed dual clutch automatic. Now I think most people, typical Renault Sport owners, will go for this manual. Whether it's good or not, I'll tell you a little bit later on. Right, the good things. Firstly, the engine. Now it's only a 1.8 litre turbo with 275 brake horsepower, and it looks pretty measly compared to a Honda Civic Type R, which has over 300 brake horsepower, and the recently detuned VW Golf R. In fact, this has got the same power output as something like a Hyundai i30N, but my God, does this engine shift. It's got such a strong torque delivery. And it doesn't matter what gear you're in, it absolutely flies. And when you're really in the mood, this thing will easily keep up with a Honda Civic Type R, honestly. The right road, the right gear, and if you're feeling in the right mood, like I just said, you could keep up with cars with a lot more power.
It's almost as comfortable as the Type R too. Unlike the Honda, the Renault doesn't come with adaptive dampers, but Renault Sport has fitted hydraulic bump stops, and they do a good job at softening the blow if you hit a pothole or a compression at speed. It's firm around town, but even with our car's 19-inch wheels, the ride is on the right side of acceptable. It's far, far more comfortable than the Hyundai in N mode too. There's a drive mode selected too. Race mode switches everything off, but also adds a horrible droning noise in the cabin.
The brakes are pretty good too. There isn't the strength that you find in the Honda Civic Type R, but there's a nice progression to the brake pedal. In fact, the throttle is nicely positioned quite close to the brake pedal, allowing you to do those heel and toe gear changes in the manual. That brings me neatly onto the gearbox actually, because whilst I'm happy that Renault Sport is offering two types of gearbox with this car, it's not the best manual gearbox in the world. It feels quite thin, the gear knob. It feels a bit cheap and a bit plasticky. And in this particular car, it feels a bit notchy between third and fourth gear. It hasn't got the rifle precision that you find in a Honda Civic Type R, but it's better than the gearbox in the Hyundai i30N. That car has a slight springiness to the gear change. The gearbox is good, but others do it better. You also have to be really in the mood to drive this car because it will get on your nerves. Like I said, the ride is a little bit firm. The steering sort of fizzes and darts around in your hands. This is not a relaxing hot hatch to drive. If you want one of those, the VW Golf R is the car for you. However, when you are in the mood, this thing really does reward you. You have to work with it, and when you do work with it, it puts an enormous smile on your face.
Another thing is the Megane has four-wheel steering. It first debuted on the lesser-powered Megane GT, and it's pretty good. At low speeds, the rear wheels turn in the opposite direction to the front, thereby aiding manoeuvrability. And then, at high speeds, the rears turn in the same direction as the front wheels. At first, it all seems a bit weird. Around town, the rears are a bit slow, so sometimes it feels like you're driving a shopping trolley. It feels a bit all over the place, and then, when you're up to speed, there's a surprising agility to the car which you just don't feel in rivals. But after a time you get used to it, you trust it, and it works brilliantly. Overall then, what is the Megane RS like? Well, put it like this, while the Civic Type R is brilliant out of the box, the Megane needs some time to get used to it. But once you have, it's a really intoxicating hot hatchback that has a charm and appeal all of its very own. To watch my review of the Honda Civic Type R, click the video window at the top and below for our Hot Hatches playlist. And make sure you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe by pressing the Carbuyer logo.